Hello, everyone. Hope you all are washing your hands, constantly staying safe. We would like to thank you all for joining us for today's very special webinar on Let's Make the COVID Safe Path app better. My name is Saurabh and I'll be your host for today. Let me begin by telling you quickly about what Safe Path app is. It's a project by MIT and is solving an amazing problem statement at a crucial time where we stand right now. Uh, as we all know, the coronavirus has shattered the lives of many across the world for health and economic reasons. And many around the world want to reopen the economy, and we can see the repercussions of what happens when the economy is shut for the longer time in US and many other countries. We can see how badly people want to get out of their house, to reopen the economy, to feel secure again. And SafePath is doing exactly that by helping communities flatten the curve of COVID-19 together. More about the app once Jonathan begins the session. And our speaker for today is Jonathan Wright, of course, who's CTO for Digital Shift and is based out of Oxford, UK. He's frequently in demand as a speaker at international conferences such as TEDx, Gartner, Oracle, Air Summit, and more. Jonathan is the QA lead for the COVID Safe Path MIT project and will be showcasing what the project is all about and how you can contribute to this great cause. Before we move on, we want to give a shout out to our email partner, HandySense. As you all see, we are in a situation where we have to communicate during this lockdown, and sending out emails turns out to be a very effective way of communicating with the customers. And emails always remain an important customer channel, but still a lot of companies face issues in terms of delivery. And that's exactly what HandySends are solving. HandySends are a trusted reseller of Twilio SendGrid. They help in delivering transactional and marketing emails through world's largest cloud-based email delivery platform, which will empower you to communicate not just with email, but also with other channels like SMS and WhatsApp. And by the way, they have an amazing giveaway for all the attendees here that will be revealed at the end of the webinar. So stay tuned for it. Today we have people from across the world, from countries like India, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, US, UK, and New Zealand to name. And before I pass it on to Jonathan, I just want to give you a quick heads up on how this webinar will be shaping up, but just a few house rules to consider. We will be shooting polls at timely intervals just to keep the engagement going on. You can ask all your questions right into the chat window. If you have any questions that you want to ask, just shoot it over there. At any given point, if you have any questions, just click on the raise hand button. You can find that on, you can see that hand icon on your dashboard. When you click that, someone from our team will unmute you, and then you can speak directly with Jonathan if you have a larger question. We'll be having a Q&A session at towards the end of the webinar, so you can ask all your questions to Jonathan directly, and we can pass on those questions under the chat section. So without taking much of the time, I'll pass it on again to Jonathan. Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you for that kind introduction. It's great to be here. I hope everyone's staying well and staying safe. This is obviously a really great opportunity for you to make a real difference and save lives. We've got a lot of content to go through, so I'm going to kind of skip through too much of the background about myself. You can check if you want to contact me directly. I've got my Twitter handle at the bottom. It's easy to find me on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/in/automation. Nice and easy to get. Okay, so let's start with the a bit of an intro into the actual project itself. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it kind of started, what it does, and how you can get involved. And I'm also going to do a little bit of a quick demo as well. So, if it goes a bit too fast, you can always watch this on demand once it's finished. So, partly what you may have all already heard about things like contact tracing. This is something which I'm here in the UK, and the NHS I've been working with on a project called NHSX. But I've been involved with the MIT project, and I'm helping lead their testing in production now, as the application went live today on the Android site for Haiti and some regions in the US. So if you can't see it straight away, don't worry. I'm going to show you how you can access it as we go along. So let me give you a bit of an idea of what contact tracing is and why it's so important. So first of all, for everyone who's listening today, part of it's to work out whether or not you've been exposed. So it's going to privately log your data. So that's data that's logged on your phone. It's not going anywhere else, and you've got full control of it. It's not sending that information anywhere. You get to choose whether or not you export it. And the reason why is the applications there is if, for instance, you was infected and you was going to your local health authority, you would be able to share this information, choose whether you could share this information for the last 14 days of your activity. So I'm going to give a bit of example how that works. And obviously from a public health perspective, reliable contact tracing, removes those false positives. It helps inform the public, and it also has a level of accuracy because we're taking that mapping data. And of course, and we'll show you in the demo how you anonymously get rid of, private data. So things like your home and work, anything which can trace back to you. So let me give a bit of a background. So the first scenario really is someone like myself. So I would, download the application onto my phone, which I've got on my iOS phone here, and also on a number of different devices, which I've got plugged into a dock here for testing purposes. So I've got the app now, and it's saying that there's, I know it's quite difficult to see, that there's no known contact that I've had. Now, if I quickly go into my exposure history, you can see that since I've been using this mobile app every day, which you can see is green because it's cross-referenced, and I've actually not left the house for 35 days. So obviously I'm all green, but the scenarios which we want is people that actually are interacting. So first of all, GPS is one of the technologies, and also you probably already heard about the work that Google and Apple are doing on a new Bluetooth API, which will be used for this proximity based location. So you can use both kind of technologies. Now we're starting with the GPS, and then we're going to move into Bluetooth as we go live. So again, let's kind of just get that story of, well, why is this so important? So kind of from a top left-hand side of things, you've got someone who's got the symptoms and actually potentially has caught the virus. I give an example, a real-world example. My uncle is in hospital at the moment, who's caught COVID-19 and is in a critical state. So they would have asked him to actually upload that data and help identify potentially other people who he's come into contact with, and if he's a frontline staff, part of it is he's going to have to travel around, and he may have interacted with people while they're doing the grocery shopping, maybe while he's traveling to do assisting other people. So part of it is there's people that potentially have got it and they don't know, and then there's other people that are not infected, like I've just shown on my mobile app. So at the moment, everybody's one step behind. So there's no way you know that you're infected because you don't know who you've interacted with. So this is the importance of contact tracing. So it's a great example. This has come from Apple and Google. But the idea is you periodically kind of check to see if you've interacted with anybody. Now remember, that's just cross-referencing your GPX data with what's coming from the health authority. You can select your health authority. And the second thing is, part of this is it's anonymous data. So, with the Bluetooth technology, if you have sat next to somebody, which I'm going to give you the example of, it can use that data and it gives you a unique key which can't be identified or traced back to you. But the idea is it will push you a notification to say, actually, you may be, it might go amber and say you may have coincided in the same geolocation, location for a certain amount of time, or potentially if you were in the same location for a long period of time, and you had somebody in your home or house, it would also then be able to tell you that they potentially have there's someone who's interacted with you and maybe have infected you. So I don't know how much of you know about South Korea and how the fact that they were able to help flatten the curve. And the reason is if you look at the information online, it's back to this patient 31. So on the 29th of January, there was somebody who was, not feeling great, and unfortunately ended up in hospital. And so they'd interacted with a lot of people. In fact, they'd interacted with about 1,000 people during this, when they'd got the actual fever, when they'd gone, into a hotel, attended a church, and then also obviously been in the hospital. So part of it is, by the time it was patient 31, there was a whole stack of contact tracing information, and that would the interviewer the healthcare professional had to go through and say to them, what time did you attend church? What time did you go to the hospital? Because we're going to have to backtrace and notify all of those people. So, that is great if you've got great memory. I don't. So, the fact that this is, Google by default tracks 650 locations per day of where you go around. So if you've got an Android phone, that location information is already there, and that's every 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes it knows where it is. And you may be thinking, oh, this is a bit scary, and I don't want to share my data, but I'm going to show you how it works and how you don't have to worry about how your data is being handled. So I also mentioned about the fact that people might actually interact. So the NHS in the UK at the moment are using the RAF bases, are testing the proximity of the Bluetooth API by people walking past who are obviously fully protected, and just to see if that person hovers with them for too long, what potentially could, how long it would be, and would it set off an alarm on the phone or not. So part of it is it's really important that about that. There's two type of beacon data. There's your GPS data, which you're probably all familiar with when you hit location, share your location data. And I spoke with the UK government a couple of days ago, who was saying about, obviously there's legislation across the EU about sharing data, and obviously there's policies in place in each country with different laws around how much access people have to your data, and we've seen some of the kind of historical events in the past, such as Cambridge Analytica and Facebook, and we're trying to learn by making this a privacy first, privacy by design led project, and also to improve things by opening transparency. It's an open source project, anybody can get involved. There's this great website on here, testandtrace.com. Go and check that out if you want to find out a little bit about what this technology is, but there'll be all the links available at the end. So let's fall back to the actual technology for a second. We talked about the fact that there's two parts of the application. There's the first bit, which is the MIT COVID Safe Paths app, which is what we're helping test at the moment, and that really tells you about your exposure. It also tracks you and gives you information, allow you to share information with your public health authority. And also on the technology, we've talked about it, the fact that it uses GPS, it uses the PACT and GLA and the PEP-PT standards that are out there at the moment. And then there's this Safe Places web tool. So this is actually for your health authority to actually sit with you and say, okay, we're going to remove any personal or private data from here. So your home address, areas, your workplace, places that may be traceable back to you. So, this is really going to help that privacy. And once that's been sanitized, it then publishes to the database, which then lets people know that Jonathan, they could potentially be exposed.
We cannot hear
so
you.
I think a demo shows a million words. So, I'm going to show you this demo, which we recorded on Friday, and and it kind of gives you an idea. So we're launching the Safe Paths app, and I'm going to go through both journeys. So the first journey is I'm, like my uncle, I've been kind of infected, and I'm sitting down with the health authority or the health professional. So first of all, I'm going to select who my health authority is. So if I'm in the UK, it's probably going to be the NHS. If I'm in the US, it might be someone like Cerner or some other organization that's helping with to support this. So once I've selected my health authority, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import my Google Maps. So that's using Google Track. We could share it by email. We could share it by a more secure method like Google Drive. And what you're sharing is your longitude and longitude information. So as you can see here, there's no data that's identifiable. I know that was very quick. We'll go back to it. But what you do is you load that data up into the Safe Places redaction tool. So this is some data that someone's donated of their movements over their period of time before the lockdown. Now it's artificially, because we're using test data, dummy data here, we've artificially made it for March, so that way we can start using it for tests. And as you can see there, one of those travel locations is going over 100 miles an hour, and that is a fast, high-speed network, which is a train. So what we can do is we can remove travel out of it completely. We can select the different icons to remove individually the actual values, and you can see the ones in pink are where you've actually stayed for a long time. So that could be a hotel, that could be your place of home. So they're the ones we'd have to probably look at removing. And then you've got the yellow ones, which is where you've stopped for a small period of time. And you could drill down into that, and the idea is, as they interview you, you'd say, well, actually I came to this location to see a client, or I came here for to visit family. I can change the data range to the last 9 days, the last 5 days, so you can make sure it's relevant, so you can walk them through. And then once you've got that data and you're happy with it, we hit the save button. And what that will do is that will export that that interview into a JSON file. Now, the great thing about this now is that we can publish that information. So you can see we've exported that data. We're now going to go to the publisher and then publish that data to an endpoint to share with the health authority, which could be the NHS, it could be some other organization. Now, I know we're going to open this up to kind of questions. I know we're already just going to do a quick poll, but if you notice, this is running on a local host. So this is actually going to be running within a healthcare organization. So there's no way this data is going to go outside of that. Now I'm coming back in with if I'm someone like myself who's going to check on hit that historical data. So what that does is it checks my GPS information with the information we've just published to the test authority. In this case, we've just created a test, not a health authority, but just a standard test authority. Let me talk a little bit, for those who kind of don't know about digital twins, I'm going to talk a little bit about digital twin technology, because that's what we're using in production to be able to generate a model of what it is. You can check out, this is my TED Talk, which I did a couple of years ago around cognitive learning and how we learn from a production system and bring it back. And I'm going to just give you a bit of a flyby kind of view of what digital twins in and why it's relevant to contact tracing. And then we're going to go into a few more demos and show you how it all fits together. So these are the kind of things that I do for clients. So there's all sorts of things from smart city projects to IoT. These are the kind of the projects, which is why my involvement with the project appeared, because I'd done some contact tracing for a smart city project a few years ago, which I'm going to go on to and show you a bit of a demo for. But let me first start with, well, what is a digital twin? Because some of you might not be familiar with the term. I've been kind of talking for the last 6 years around shifting right, and that's kind of how you use a model of the real world to inform your testing on the left hand side, or inform your development or idealization or whatever it may be to make your product better. And so this is kind of the next step along. So, but it's not something new. That's the good thing about it. I'm not going to spend too long about the backdrop of why it's not new. But 50 years ago, I think it was about a week ago, that actually NASA used this technology to create a digital model of the Apollo 13. So that way they could actually look at how they would change that to fix the problem that they'd got, and then uploaded it. Now, of course, now with augmented reality and mixed reality, we can actually, as you see with the HoloLens 2 there, you can actually physically see representations of digital twins. But actually, more recently, it's actually this concept is being used for the product lifecycle, so kind of what we do in software development lifecycle. And I've just finished writing a chapter on cognitive engineering and shift right, which kind of talks all about this. And on the right hand side, you can see this great example of a smart city project. So infrastructure to X, kind of smart city, car2X, all that kind of technology. So, that helps us generate models to how we test these systems. So the example which I'm going to give you quite quickly is one that I did in 2015 to help with a smart city project in the city of Copenhagen. So we, part of it was a challenge around, a bit like contact tracing. We were taking historical GPS information and real-time GPS information and making recommendations on how people could improve their CO2 emissions. So this were things like, less travel on things like car, more on bikes. We had about 38,000 people that were actually going to be using it, who worked and lived in the city of Copenhagen. We were obviously looking at a lot of metrics, in a gamification. There's a lot of aspects to the big data exchange. So, complex data. But the challenge which we had was generating the historical data for something that we'd not actually launched, as far as creating a digital twin. So this is actually, as you can see in the bottom right hand corner, this is recorded back in 2015. And a good friend of mine put this demo together to kind of give you an idea of how it fits, and we actually used this for the project. And what you're seeing at the moment is that longitude, latitude data, which we exported out of the contact tracing app, and emulating with real devices. So it's injecting GPX information into those real devices so that they're emulating walking around Copenhagen in different multimodal types of journeys. So things like bikes going at 12 miles per hour, people walking at 2 to 3 miles an hour, people appearing at one location and then appearing at another using the underground and tube system, metro. And then, we're bringing all this data in to then create historical information. So, really quite complex, but it was something that we had to do for that project, which is what we've applied some of the same approaches to, and been working with a number of teams who are helping volunteer to do things like cause and effect modeling to be able to generate the types of scenarios what we need, which is I interact with you, I'm in the same geolocation for a certain period of time, so therefore what I should see on my exposure history is that I've been potentially could have caught something due to this interaction at a store or something like that. So I'm going to go on to a little bit about a digital twin and the technology that we've used. One of the technologies that we've used is Eggplant, which is this ability to take a model of something. So we took a model of the mobile app and then generate all permutations of it. So we generated about 10,000 synthetic automation tests that go through and do exploratory journeys through the mobile app. We also use this model to actually then drive the testing, so the automated testing. So took us about 5 hours, which was a couple of days ago. We generated 9,000 different journeys through the app, 250 kind of test cases that were generated out of it, all from this digital twin. So on the left hand side you can see the digital twin in action. So it's going to open the device, it'll do that kind of initial kind of sign up, access to location data. It's now going into the dashboard and choosing a health authority. Then it's going to move to the next section, and it's going to keep on going round and round, testing various different scenarios and capturing whether or not the information on the screen is correct, whether or not it's set the right, say for instance, trusted source. The great thing about this is it actually allows you to go across platforms. So we've already seen that the SafePaths mobile app isn't just a mobile, it's also a web tool. So what we're able to do with this is we're able to log in, send that data to a health professional, so an NHS worker for instance, then open that up in the viewer and then retract that information. And we're not bothered, we're not just using Appium, which is obviously a mobile technology. We're able to use the Google from a kind of a Selenium, what you'd normally do with Selenium, and also other third-party applications such as an email client or Google Drive if you're sending that information to do Google Drive. So you can see this was recorded on Wednesday. It's going to do another scenario now where it's going to actually go in, and the good thing is we're using image-based testing. So we talked about model-based testing briefly, but that creates the model and all the flows through it. But we're also using IBT, so we can actually look at the values. The 22nd of March, we're able to extract the color, so it's green, it's not amber. We're also able to extract the date, what's in there, so we're using OCR, so things like Tesseract, to pull that data off, and the OCR engine would then write that to a file. So we've got that kind of data as well, and these demos are obviously available to look at down the line, and I'm going to show you some other technologies that we've used, because part of it is I'd like you guys to actually get involved with actually doing some of the crowd testing, which is our big call to action now. Is we're also running a number of NHS fundraisers this week. I'm also doing some work with the British Computer Society, who are also trying to get people to actually sign up and start testing this mobile app in live, and we're going to use some APM tools to create a digital model based on what you're actually doing in production. So there's some telemetry data that we've embedded in there, which we're actually able to see that you've gone through and you've done the share location history flow, and that you exported that JSON file. And then we can also see, some other information further down. So this is the power of being able to deal with native apps, with web apps, and also hybrid apps. So, that's a great example. The next one is, I'm going to take 2 seconds to say, all what I'm going to show you here. If you want to get involved, you can send me a message right now. So that's help@coronavirus.fo. I'll then send you on all the links that you need to join. They're going to be at the end of the presentation, so don't worry if you think you might have missed out. But you can email me directly, and I'm more than happy to kind of go through, talk to you about your experience. You don't need to be, an automated tester or a security tester or a performance tester. You could just be multilingual, so you could understand English and Indian or something, and help with the localization testing, because we need people in every country with all your historical information. So, I'm going to give you that kind of call to action first. So, exploratory testing, so literally going in, playing with the app, trying a few scenarios that we've been working with the team on Slack and Confluence to kind of build some test scenarios up there, and some charters, testing charters. Of course, if you're able to do functional or automated testing, that's great. We've got access to licenses and tools that have been kindly donated by the companies that are on this presentation, and we can get you signed up for those. We're doing performance testing. I did a performance advisory council session with a call to action with those guys, and get the performance community involved. The security kit community is also getting involved as well. But also this localization testing, the UX stuff. So you can see there, I've changed the language to Chinese, and then obviously part of it is, will the text overlap? Can you read the information that you need? Are the translations correct? Does it fit on the form factor? As far as the screen size, there's all sorts of different types of things. Now, this is, the big ask, which I know, a lot of people may say, well, actually, I don't want to share my personal data. So I wanted to kind of give you an idea of how sharing your data can help. So I don't know if anyone seen takeout.google.com. If you go on there, you can export any of your data, so your Google Drive data, your all your email information. You can get all the data that you potentially have stored with Google, and they'll send it to you. But what we're interested in is just your location data, and we're using that so that we've got some deltas. So for the city of Copenhagen, what we did is we got a whole stack of university students to use a GPS logger and walk around, go to cafes, go to lectures, and then upload us the data and share it with us. Now, as you see there, you're exporting the format in JSON. You can download it. You can visualize it yourself. So, you can actually say, I'm going to go and look at my personal data and see where that information is. So I've literally just exported this. You're going to see that I'm going to go back into a particular year. So I got back all the way back to 2014. And what I'm going to load is a little tool called gpsvisualizer.com. And what that allows you to do is take that file that you've just exported and then export it to any other format. So we're using GPX, which is a standard format. So I can take that JSON file and create just a flat format with just your location information in it. I can also export it into different other types. So in this particular example, I'm just going to visualize it on Google Maps, because I think a lot of people will be familiar with Google Maps and how that works. So I'm going to map my own personal data. So this is data I've taken from 2016. And then I'm going to visualize it. Now, obviously, I can export it to any other format and donate it or sanitize it using the sanitizing tool, which I've showed you. But part of it, as you can see here, if I go down to Silicon Valley, when I was based in Santa Clara, you can see with the red spots where I spent most of my time. So this has taken snapshots, and if I just hover over the different locations, you'll see things like various different companies that I was helping out, and the locations, and so these were all stops that kind of went to. Also, if I click on it, you can see that I was at the old Apple Infinite Loop location before they had the donut on that date at that time. So it's got information of the duration, which was 8:30 till 11:30 there. You can export that data, and and that would be a big help. So we're using these deltas. We're synthetically generating from the deltas millions and billions of historical, journeys, so that way we can test. So it's a big thing, and obviously it's whether or not you be prepared to share your test data. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. There's other things if you don't want to share your data. So there's another project which I'd highly recommend, and I've created an easy bit.ly link. This is something you could do as well. So, I've been helping with the World Community Grid since 2004. I've donated 22 years of CPU time to things like cracking the human genome to help with cancer and AIDS and other pandemics. They're now swapping compute time into helping with the COVID-19 vaccinations. So that's a great charity you could do. And what that does is it uses your CPU when you're not using it. So if you're leaving your laptop on all day, or you've got a PC on all day, it'll run it in the background. As soon as you move the mouse, it just stops and waits until you finish using the machine, then continues using the CPU. So that's an easy app which people can download and make a big difference to. Of course, the project that we're talking about now, and we're going to go into some questions in a minute, but and another poll, the main links for you to go off and find out more, I've put on there. So of course there's the MIT SafePaths website, which is at the top. That on there's all those links that I've got below. You've got the join sign up, which is the sign up on Google Docs, but there's a backlog because people are obviously volunteering. The next one is that you can also access the Git repository. So like I said, it's a completely open source project, so you can access the Git and also the latest versions of the iOS build, which I'm going to show you in a second, which is an APK and an IPA file which you can load onto your own local device. So you can start today. And also there's the charity site which has been set up, which is really kind of the communications coming out of everybody who's contributing to the project, to give you a bit more information about the project at covidsafepaths.org. I've added 2 more bit.ly links which I've called Safe Hands, just because we're putting it in your safe hands and to save lives. If you go on there, you'll get direct access to the Slack channel, which is I'm on at the moment. Let me just check what the direct link is. It's covidsafepaths.slack is the actual name if you want to sign up, but that link will auto invite you, so you just literally need to put your username, your email address and your password, and then you'll be able to open that up in your Slack account. If you want to make sure you fill out the form as well, so the link at the bottom is the Safe Hands one, gives you the volunteer form, which is asking you a few questions like what could you do to help. Okay, so now we can get the poll up. Hopefully we'll get some results. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people who've got a spare phone out there, which is fantastic, which is a good 70%. 30% if you probably don't have a phone. If you're an Android phone user, easy quick tip: if you go down to you go to settings, go to about, then go to your build information. If you tap on the build version 5 or 6 times, it'll enable developer mode, which means that you can literally plug in a device like I have now, which is an Android device form factor, and that will allow you to turn development mode on, and then you can literally plug that into your computer and it'll be ready to run Appium. So I'm going to show you a couple of quick demos. I'm going to take questions on the last demo because it might run a little bit. Now, if you've got a Apple machine, now this is really useful. So I've got this kind of obviously if you've got something like a MacBook, that's fantastic. I'm also got a MacBook Mini there to help, and also, as you can see in the background, I've got a Mac as well. All that run have the ability to run Xcode and also be able to generate a virtual device. So if you look on the right hand side here, we've got an iPhone SE, and the iPhone SE can be a real pain. So I've got an SE here, and obviously the form factor with the SE is much smaller, which means you do get a lot of problems, especially as this is a React native mobile device. If you've got really old devices like the first iPhones, that's great. But if you don't have those devices, then what you can do is you can select any of those devices there from the list. So we've got, we're not doing tablets as such in the first release, but things like the SE, like the iPhone X, we've got a brand new one that's just loaded, which is the SE 2020. They're all great devices to be able to test on, but you'll be able to spin up a virtual one using this application. So all you need is Xcode, which is a completely free tool. Then you just go to simulators, and then you can just launch this and install the IPA file on your Mac. Now, of course, there's a challenge around if you don't have a Mac and maybe you're on a PC. You can see that I literally recorded this today at 5 minutes before the presentation launched. But the other option is obviously from an Android, which is what's gone live now. You can just use the Android Studio, which is a free application to download. It also gives you access to any type of configuration. So you can actually load foldables. So this is like a foldables form factor. You could also run the latest version of Android 11 on there. And we could do exactly the same thing. So I can inject a GPS location from somewhere like Copenhagen, and it artificially will inject that into the phone device when I launch the app. So lots of check capabilities are that's just straight in the Android app. Now the Android app will work on both PC and Macs quite easy. Xcode is unfortunately only Apple, but you can also plug in your own device. So if I plugged in my Android device now, once I've unlocked it in developer mode, that device will then appear on that device list. The same as if you plug your iPhone into Xcode, it will say, do you trust this computer? You say yes. It will then allow you to actually launch that computer up. So there's two kind of platforms that give you access to emulators. Now, of course, if you've got your own phone and you want to actually do something with it, there's the guys at Eggplant are helping at the moment. The iOS gateway and Android gateway are completely free. You can load them on your PC and Mac. And if you're familiar with something like Appium, you can connect to that device. So in this example, I'm connected to my own personal phone, and I'm able to then automate against it. I could automate using those two emulators. So if I've got those emulators running, I just add those emulators to the desired capability. But if not, you can literally just plug in your phone device, and if you notice in the background, all you need is the name of the device. So whatever you've decided to call that device, you just need to put that in, and also the type of technology you're doing. So there's a number of different competing technologies. But what happens is once it's done, it'll launch up the actual mobile device itself. You'll see the app load, and then you'll be able to swipe on it. You'll be able to be able to record it. The recorder then outputs to Python, Java, or any other language. And you're also then be able to interact with those objects. And as you can see there, I'm now getting information. If I scroll further down, I'll be able to extract, say for instance, the more COVID ID as an information set to check that works from a language perspective. So it's as easy as that. Plug in your device, load up Appium, give the details, and you can start automating tests or doing some manual exploratory testing. Now, I'm going to open up two questions whilst this is running in the background because it's a longer video. But first, I'm just going to explain how you can get access to remote apps in the cloud. So the guy, Iran, and the team at Perfecto give us our own tenant ID. So if you sign up with the free trial, so I've just used help@coronavirus.fo, which is that email that I gave out earlier. Once you sign up on the free trial aspect, it'll send you an email with your credentials, and then all you need to do is literally go to the login, mobile cloud login, and then you'll be ready to be able to do manual testing and analyze that information. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of 4 or 5 different ways that you can help. You can see here that actually we're going into into Perfecto, and I'm actually selecting the iPhone SE 2020. This is a physical device running iOS 13.4. It's only just come out. It's available to you now. You can, if you notice when in Appium, you could actually connect to a remote device. So you don't even need to use this screen. You can actually connect to it by clicking on the capabilities and exporting those values that you needed to actually populate the Appium connector, and there's a Perfecto option in Appium by default. And what we can see is I'm uploading the latest version of the COVID 0.94 IPA. We're waiting for the 1.0 to drop, and hopefully will be in the App Store in the coming days. But once that SafePaths app's loaded on, I can then go through. Now for this first example, I've actually I've turned off location sensors, so I'm not actually giving access to any application for my location data. So this was a test that one of the other QA resources asked me to just check what would the journey be if you can't even access location data. So this allows me to then still go through, enable notifications, but it comes up with the correct one that says location tracking is currently disabled, and then it'll redirect me to that component, so I can can demonstrate how that particular case flow works. Now that's great, but I want to give you another example, so I'm just going to end that using that device for a second, and then I want to give you an example of Android. So Android's obviously a very difficult platform because most people are running the latest version of the iOS, unless, for instance, there's a reason like your device is too old to run iOS 13. But if I scroll down through the list, you'll see there's actually 10,000 devices available. There's just a subset allowed on this tenant, what we've got available. And as you can see, there's the new Galaxy 10. There's also the access to the actual flippable devices. So these are dual screen devices which have just come through. So to give you an idea of testing something that actually is a flippable phone, this we can also test that, and that's obviously really important because whether an app docks into the top half of the screen or if you turn the tablet round and create a phablet, part of it is it gives you multiple different views. So we're taking the latest release, which is version 1, which has just landed as of today. I'm now going to just click the play button, which then launches it, and when I launch it, you can see it's launched across the entire foldable screen. So we're able to go through, we're able to go click get started. This is the official terms and conditions, which says, yes, I'm happy to, share and consent my location data. This will not be shared with third parties apart from health organizations. And then I can actually go into the app and start using it. So, we've onboarded, which is kind of going through, give access to, your set up your phone. So turn on, as you see, the flow slightly changed with the released product, where you choose your health authority straight away. So we've got one that's set up because we're rolling out this in Haiti first, and then the US probably will be next week. So as we select that, we can also then go through and complete the journey, add access to location sensors data, which part of where the exploratory bit would be, well, what happens if I don't do that? So there's an example there. It says, only allow it for one time. So next time you come in, you can check whether or not it prompts you again. So, there's lots of different scenarios. And of course, the devil's in the data, right? So the data is really important because that will work out, it will make or break the project. So yeah, this is, hopefully gives you an idea of ways you can get involved, ways that you can, help contribute to. So either in sharing your sanitized data, or we can actually go through and help. I can sit there with it and scrub data off if you need it, right? We've got a team of data scientists out in Barcelona who are helping with that synthetic data. So they need anyone who can share, who's prepared to share data. You can see on this device as well, a bit similar to what we did on Android Studio, and you can also do on the Xcode, is you can insert locations from a GPS location. So you could create a test scenario, which is, I insert, I'm at this location, at this GPS location. Then I spin up another phone, because you can open multiple phones on here, and go to the same location. So they're both sat in the same coffee shop, maybe Starbucks or something. And then you both submit your data, so you both share your location information, and then upload it using the publishing tool, and then you've actually got a scenario which should come back with a red icon for both of those people to say that they've actually been potentially infected. I'm giving an example here of, we've got the device log information of what's going on. I've actually turned on network virtualization, so I'm throttling the connection. So these are real devices connected to real cell, but actually what it's going to do is it's going to override that information, and it's actually going to make it so there's packet loss, jitter on the line, poor connection. And what we see with the poor connection is, not only does it take a very long time for the SafePaths news information to come through, but actually when I click on the news path, it just comes up with an error. So that's great, because that gives me the ability now to report that, which I have literally just reported that in the dev underscore app dev channel, which is on Slack. And straight away we've got developers who are sitting there going, okay, how did you do this? How do you reproduce it? So as you're going to see in 2 minutes time, it actually creates a test report with a video which shows exactly when it happened, exactly what you were doing as far as what you were clicking on, what you'd done before. And actually there's a report which is actionable that someone can go off and use right now. So you can see that's been generated. I can view that report. I can view on the left hand side every single step that I've gone through. So if you did some exploratory testing and you had, you didn't really know where you'd just gone through, you can do that as well, because you can go back through and say, oh, I touched here, I swipe down to get the notifications to say that it's currently accessing my GPS. I swipe back onto my camera app and now it's crashed. And you've got all that information that you can pass over to the developer, including all the logging information. So what we're doing from an APM perspective, and the really nice people at Splunk for Good have been working on the COVID-19 platform. We've got crash analytics coming from things like Firebase. We've got telemetry data telling us where people are going on journeys. So there's lots of enrichment to help us do testing in production, and we need you. So I'm going to let this just run round in a circle, but I'm going to open up to any questions and try and get a little bit of interaction with everybody. I'm going to I'll put the at the end I'll put the links on just in case you hadn't got them before. I know the team will help by actually sending out those links afterwards, so if you want to get involved you can. And so, but first of all I want to just say thank you to everybody who's attended today, watching on demand, and also people who are contributing as well.